Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Talking Point. Sean Michael Small here on WESN, your content capital, WESN, the only station in the nation broadcasted in HD. And my co-host, Keita Shai, can't join us today, but we have a full lineup. After the first break, I'll be speaking to some representatives from CAISO with regards to, well, the equality in our nation. It's something that maybe a lot of us might want to shy away from, but at the end of the day, all of our citizens' needs need to be considered. And then after that, we should have Opposition Senator Jayanti Lakshmi to speak about some of the matters that she has been dealing with in Parliament, in the Senate, rather. And a lot to get into, to get her take on both some aspects of the Brent Thomas case, but also the big issue from Friday, the trial by judge. But before we get into that, let's start off this morning with our daily review. And the first thing that I want to get into is a topic that I wasn't able to fully speak about yesterday. And very recently, when I have not been able to fully express and explain, people will take the shortened, summarized version that you give them on an issue and think that is the finality of your position. So I think it's best for me to fully explain what I mean, or at least try to do so that as many people as possible could fully understand where I'm coming from. My issue is a statement that the Minister of Finance made, I believe this week, with follow-on debates on with his mid-year review. And it was based on something with regards to GDP. I told Karen about it off air. We kind of spoke about it on air, but we didn't really get into it. And this is something that Karen and I and Keaton, we have spoken about before. And to be fair to the minister, this is based on how it's reported. Right? Although generally speaking, how things are reported in this country, my complaint is they're reported very literally, and for the most part, things are not taken out of context, maybe with the headline. But the minister said, so based on the data, what we are seeing is our economy has fully recovered from COVID-19, and in fact, our nominal GDP today is higher than it was in 2015. Our GDP today is 28 billion as compared to less than US 26 billion in 2015. All right, cool. I mean, everybody's GDP should be higher than it was in 2015. I mean, that's what we hope it to be. That, to some extent, that's just getting back to the baseline post-COVID. Because then you have people who just want to be negative. So if our nominal GDP is growing by leaps and bounds, and our nominal GDP has, in fact, increased by 25% since 2020, they say, oh, that's irrelevant, you should be looking at real GDP. Real GDP is when you take away, you adjust it for inflation. Nominal GDP grows, but it includes the growth you will get because prices just increase. GDP, gross domestic product, is basically your output of your nation's economy. So if it grows because of inflation, the output hasn't actually increased. That's why some economists like to look at real GDP. You should be looking at real GDP, forgetting completely that our debt to GDP ratio is measured by nominal GDP. So as our nominal GDP goes up, our debt to GDP ratio goes down. Yes, that is technically true. That is technically true because as inflation goes up, you know, the value of your loan goes down. The value of the money spent to pay back the loan also technically goes down, because the purchasing power goes down. But the amount you have to pay back does not compensate higher. No, whatever you borrowed, that's what you pay back. So if you could spend everything that you borrowed before inflation hits in a major way, well, you profit. But the issue is, at the end of the day, your debt to GDP ratio is kind of like an indicator on your ability to pay back that debt. Right? It's not a direct comparison because, again, it's not as though the government is earning all of this money in the GDP. The GDP is the output of the entire economy. The government is in control of all that. But it's an indicator. It's an indicator to what extent can this nation service its debt. Generally speaking, some theories, you could go all the way to 100%. Or, in some cases, I think Japan is at the 200 mark, well over 100. Higher-end economies are at or somewhat over 100. And you could do that for a time. How long you could sustain that is not necessarily well known. We stay, ideally no more than the 70 to 80% range, somewhere around there, for an economy as large as ours in very basic theory. But first of all, our GDP is growing because we're coming out of a pandemic. So just reopening things is going to increase our GDP because it's output that we might not have had in 2020 when businesses shut down, right? If my farm wasn't producing because for whatever reason, maybe I was stuck in a foreign country and I reopened my farm, I reopened my shop, I reopened my car repair garage, I am now able to do my job as a waiter, do my job as a chef, do my job as a domestic housekeeper. That adds output to GDP. So just reopening the economy caused growth. But then also is the fact that economic activity was not the same when we now reopen. So we have to work back there. That also is going to technically increase GDP. And yet it's going to seem like a big number because we're working back to where we were. So there is that. But then there's also the fact that, look, yes, technically, you can say that inflation will decrease our debt to GDP ratio. Yes, it does kind of work that way. But the confidence in being able to repay our debt, our actual output is not matching our debt. So our equity, our stock price, it's not really, our stock price is not actually growing so that we could keep borrowing off of our stocks, off of our equity. It's just that we got hit with inflation to some extent. A lot of inflation. Haven't we been complaining about the price of food and other things over the last year? Didn't the Prime Minister say there are tough times ahead, all while the Minister of Finance is trying to say, things are looking good. Now, if we want to say things are looking good relative to other nations, maybe in the region, maybe around the world, maybe. But again, government doesn't like it when we compare them to standards that they can't achieve, whether we think it's reasonable or not. More importantly, the minister's not doing that. He's just making the statement. Now, somebody, if I am wrong, if I have the context wrong, if there was more to what he said than that, somebody come, call in, let me know. I will take correction. But every now and then, government ministers use technical terms in ways that make me really wonder, do they have a grasp on the subject that they're speaking about? In this case, it's economics. I get it. If you're the Minister of Loans, yeah, you're happy. Because accounting-wise, you're 100% correct. 100% correct. But with regards to our economy actually growing, we are trying to get back on track to where we were before the pandemic. And even then, one could argue we're trying to get back on track to where we were before 2015, 2016, 2014, when energy prices sank and our foreign exchange situation was horrendous. Not all your fault, but partially some of all your fault. As Karen pointed out, who's been there a long time, no diversification. So the economy is not that simple, but when you want to boil it down to these very simple, straightforward talking points, it doesn't paint the full picture. This is a complex thing, and I would have more confidence in a minister who didn't talk about such a technical topic like a politician, aka like a used car salesman. Stop trying to butter me up with the best way to spin something. Yes, I get it. You know, as Keaton always says, you have to be careful with causing people to lose confidence just with your words. That's true. That's true. All public figures have to be careful about that. But we get mixed messaging. More importantly, people feel the pinch, and then they hear this, and they can't put 2 and 2 together, because 2 and 2 can't equal 5, but that's what this is more or less saying, and we end up in this situation. A couple other stories, which I'm probably not going to have time to get into too much. First of all, TTPS, the Deputy Commissioner of Police for Intelligence and Investigations, he more or less said that the school bomb threats were a hoax, which I think is reasonable. I do wonder to what extent we would have gotten this information if we didn't have the Joint Select Committee, where he was asked and he answered the question, he gave out the information. That's point number one. Point number two, I think this is all reasonable, right? I'm glad that we got the information. If we didn't get the information, that might be the real hiccup, but this is all reasonable. The expertise to deal with this situation, particularly because it's outside of our borders. That's where the email probably came from ultimately. But I think the question now, and this is going to be a hard one, exactly what was the point of this hoax? Was it just a cruel prank that maybe the people that did it don't understand the damage that it did? It might not seem like a lot, but it was. Because now, to some extent, those gates are open, and it's going to make things uneasy. We lost schooling time. It's going to cast a shadow over a lot of our society now. Just a small one, a minor one, but it's going to be there now. It's going to be there now. We might see copycats of this further. And then, finally, the commissioner, she did more or less admit that the results from her crime plan, we're not seeing it. It's not bearing out. In fact, murders, rather than seeing a reduction, we saw an increase. Cool. It's good that she's willing to admit it. I did not necessarily have an issue with her crime plan, so to say. What I had an issue was with her making these very definite statements. Oh, we'll have an impact by June. We'll reduce serious crime by June. That also did not happen. Not just murders, but other serious crimes as well was not reduced. Oh, her rating is excellent. If she did not say these things, her position, in my opinion, would be a lot better. It would be a lot better. But because she's making these promises or making these statements about her own job performance, it's causing the results are not good, but it's causing them to be skewed further into a negative light. Because you're actually giving us a bad comparison. We're comparing what is to what you said. It's not looking good. We wouldn't have those comparisons to make if you did not say those things. I understand the month of June, to be fair, that was directly from a question at the Joint Select Committee on National Security. So could she have answered it differently? Maybe. I believe the MP Rudal Munilal, he wanted a definite, absolute answer. She gave it. But I think in both cases, she set herself up to look bad. And now I'm here saying, look, it looks worse than it is because we should have expected things to not be so easy for her. Despite all of my criticisms, despite all of them, that is the reality of our crime situation. Folks, we have to take a break, and when we come back, I'm going to welcome our first guest. We're going to talk about something that I think TNT doesn't really like to speak about, and that's why I want to talk about it most of all. Stay tuned to Talking Point on WSN, your content capital.
it politics? What is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing nowadays.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces flagship Mac Beam. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Safe and sound, that's how we'll get you to the biggest North Coast Jazz ever. No hassle and no worries. Park your ride at the Queen's Park Savannah. Hop on board a safe and secure shuttle with your $100 return fee, and that's it. Service begins at 10 a.m. through 1 p.m. and returns from festival grounds from 7 p.m. Park and ride, a $100 return fee, first come, first go shuttle service to festival grounds Blashy shares. No hassle and no worries. North Coast Jazz, May 27th. Born here, played here. Tickets available at Crosby's, Extra Foods Endeavour, Chaguanas Main Road, Sangre Grande, Arima, Grand Bazaar, Mart's Liquor Mart, Diego Martin, Kenny's Sports Outlets, Athletes by the Park, and WESN.
Welcome back to Talking Mind, ladies and gentlemen. Now, in TNT, we have an interesting situation of a country that can be quite conservative at times. All of the people that go to church, temple, mosque, pray, and quite liberated, or liberal at times. If, you know, Exhibit A, Carnival, Exhibit B, every fete leading up to Carnival. So where does that now leave certain aspects of our society that, technically speaking, with regards to different ideologies, we see throughout the rest of the world, they face certain amounts of challenges, certain amounts of discrimination, right? We've had these guests before, not these representatives specifically, but we've had CAISO before, and I'm pleased once again to welcome the day after, I have to admit, it's a day after the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia. We have with me Dr. Angelique Nixon. She is a director of CAISO, and Mr. Kellogg Kimakolam, who has many titles under CAISO, and I am sure does a lot of work for them. Lady and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for joining me.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having us today.
So, of course, you all have a whole program with regards to wholeness and justice. It speaks with regards to discrimination and a whole host of other things for the LGBTQ community in TNT. But before we get into those statistics on the report and the work that you've done over the past year, and I'm sure I might have asked a version of this to the representatives last year, but in TNT, I do find it strange. It's interesting. You could see signs just in everyday life of intolerance, but at the same time, it's not universal and consistent. I don't know if you're following me. Like, I have seen people be quite open with regards to their sexuality, with regards to their identity, and they've not necessarily been discriminated against at every corner. So in this country, I'm just on the outside looking in. How is it? Are we a tolerant nation? Are we an intolerant nation? Are we somewhere in between? Is it that intolerance kind of, it's in specks scattered about?
Well, I can get us started on that. I think based on our work and our experiences and my, I'll talk about my own in particular, I do think there's a mixture. I don't think it's as simple to say that we're intolerant or that we are fully tolerant. I do think that there is a mixture. And I do think that different moments create various kinds of opportunities for LGBTQ plus people to be visible. I also want to say in no uncertain terms that LGBTQ plus people, people with diverse genders and sexualities have been here a long time across our region, across the world. We are not new. We are not foreign. And I think that is the most important thing for us to consider as we talk about issues of discrimination, because it's not everywhere. It's not even, it's complicated. It's complex because of many factors. And, in our work with CAISO's Wholeness and Justice Program, we deal with, by far, the largest amounts of discrimination are, in fact, by institutions, structural discrimination that LGBTQ plus people experience from public health care to state agencies, to social welfare, to, accessing housing or goods and services. And a part of that is because we don't have state protections on the basis of LGBTQI plus identity and or any protection based on sexual orientation or gender identity. So, the state-sponsored, essentially, discrimination that is allowed to happen because we don't have those protections is something that we deal with and work with our clients on a day-to-day basis.
Now, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to add to what Angelique just said. I think it's in talking about issues of discrimination experienced by LGBTQI plus people, it's more than just, delving or inquiring about whether tolerance or intolerance. I think what's important is discussing whether or not systems enable LGBTQI plus people. And so it's, again, referring to what Angelique is saying about these very structural and systemic systems. Are they enabling to, LGBTQI plus people equitably enjoying the full extent of their human rights? And the answer to that is no. There aren't protections that exist that really look at the issues that LGBTQI plus people face, and which is why we do the work that we do and produce the report that we produce to sort of inform the kind of advocacy and direct state and different stakeholders as to what can be done or the gaps that exist in terms of, ensuring that we have an enabling and inclusive society and systems for LGBTQI plus people.
Well, so we have an Equal Opportunity Commission, of which this is not, I'm not sure, is it that the Commission does not recognize the difficulties that LGBTQ plus people might face, the potential discrimination? Because at the end of the day, that's what it sounds like. We have systems in place where this base alone, this basic commission that we have, technically should be sorting out things like this. I would imagine that's what it's there for, to prevent people from being discriminated against for criteria that has nothing to do with whatever service you're trying to access.
Well, you're raising the exact point of what we're discussing today, which is that, yes, we have an Equal Opportunity Act, which is in fact a very progressive piece of legislation. It's been hailed as something that's really important for guaranteeing and protecting the rights of every person living in Trinidad and Tobago. But it actually excludes people on the basis of sexual orientation. So while the Equal Opportunity Commission has been they've joined forces with us and other civil society organizations to say, yes, we need amendments to the Equal Opportunity Act. Because what happened when it was passed back in 2000, the description defining sex actually says sex does not include sexual orientation. So we have actually passed a piece of legislation which has not been amended to date, and the Commission has called for several amendments. It excludes and therefore is an anti-discrimination piece of legislation that is exclusive and in fact sustains and allows there to be legal forms of discrimination against people based on sexual orientation. And so if you have a case, let's say you've been fired from your job for being gay or lesbian, or same-sex loving, and you go to the commission and you file a complaint which you should be able to do based on sexual orientation, they will turn down your case and say, no, we are sorry, we cannot take your case because it is not covered under the Act. Now, for issues of gender identity, it's simply not there. And so that one is more kind of silent. So what CAISO has done for the past over 10 years is launched a campaign that we continue to press and we continue to put public information out about. We continue to put forward an agenda that aligns with this call for amendments. We've worked with the Equal Opportunity Commission plus 20 other civil society organizations to call for amendments to the Act to include several things. We have Add All 3. You can see Kellogg's t-shirt, Add All 3, amend the EOA. And the three statuses that we're calling for is age, health conditions, and LGBTI status. And we're not asking for anything special. We're not asking for more rights or extra rights. We get that a lot when we have these conversations. We're like, oh, why are you trying to get more? No, we want justice for everyone. We are very much about human rights for all, dignity and freedom and protection. We're not asking for anything special. We want to be able to live with freedom and dignity. We want to be able to walk with our heads held high and access the same services without being fear of retribution or discrimination like anyone else.
In the interim, though, we have developed a model LGBTQI plus workplace policy, and this is with consultation from the Equal Opportunity Commission. And so what the LGBTQI plus workplace policy does, it creates, or it is policy that's sort of enabling and provides guidance as to different things within the workplace that employers can, they can create or develop to ensure that the LGBTQI plus people amongst them, feel safe and feel comfortable within that workplace, and there are protections for them in that workplace. And from that, we've been able to develop multiple a toolkit and multiple, multimedia trainings and guides for businesses who signed on to the policy and who are interested in creating and enabling an inclusive environment for their employees. The toolkit is very multi-angular. It provides guidance to employers. It provides guidance to LGBTQI plus people in the workplace as well, and what their rights are as they are within the current legislative framework, what their rights are in relation to work, in relation to the workplace, in relation to how they ought to be treated, as well as it also creates space for non-LGBTQI plus employees and how they can be allies and how they can advocate for and with their LGBTQI plus counterparts. So it really tries to take that kind of holistic perspective to ensure that, while we, I guess, quote unquote, wait, there are things that exist that are trying to fill the gap. So we really encourage businesses, both in private sector and, NGOs and this kind of organizations to, have a look at the policy and to ask what they can do to ensure that their environment is enabling and inclusive. And so that's one of the services that we have offered as an organization.
Well, I find it interesting that you're apparently wearing a t-shirt that says add all three. It's not just LGBTQ, it's age and one other group you're considering. What's the third one?
Health condition.
Health conditions. Because one of the questions that I had coming out of your presentation earlier this week was, have you all looked to try to perhaps partner with stakeholders for other issues? So with the Equal Opportunity Commission, I believe there are people who have already come out and said that for disabled people, there are gaps with regards to how they are covered. And now you yourselves are not looking to just advocate for your group only. You're looking at other situations where there are gaps, where there are potentially failings of the system to try to say, well, look, let's try and fix all of these things. Have you all tried to perhaps maybe partner up with other advocacy groups because at this point now, it's some of the issues I realize I took away. It's not necessarily an LGBTQ issue. It is failings of the system in general. And this, you guys just are one group that are part of many groups of people who are potentially suffering because the system is not really keeping up with the demands of overall society.
Absolutely. We've been partnering with civil society organizations for over a decade. We have very strong partners with organizations like Network of NGOs, with WNOD, with Caribbean Human Rights Center, with Coalition Against Domestic Violence, with IGDS, with other LGBTI organizations in Trinidad and Tobago. We have worked with trade unions. We've worked with the Equal Opportunity Commission itself. One, as Kellogg said, to put forward, we partnered with the AOC to create our workplace policy, and we did that in direct, response to the fact that the government has not made any changes to amend the EOA, even though there have been promises year after year, and we continue, as Kellogg said, to quote unquote wait, but we're also demanding, because what we do strategic engagement as well with the law. We have a legal team, and we figure out ways to get people redress, and that's what Wholeness and Justice is about. And our Insights report from 2022 really reveals the ways that our work around justice seeking enables most vulnerable and the most marginalized in our communities to figure out ways to seek redress. When the year before, our 2021 report revealed that people were much less, they were not sure, we really kinds of fear around what we can do So yes, we've partnered with many folks, and our communities experience multiple forms of oppression. We don't, and we think about our intersectional and intersecting identities all the time, and that's one of the things that is revealed really through our work. So, for example, we partner regularly with the Deaf Empowerment Association because we have a program helping to train people in Trinidad and Tobago Sign Language, and we've been doing that for over a year. And we're helping to create more sign interpreters who are sensitive to issues of gender and sexuality. And therefore, at our events, we have sign interpretation as a regular practice, as an enabling practice, because we want to demonstrate what does it look like to think about justice for all. You have to show it.
Well, we're more or less, sorry, Kellogg, we're more or less out of time, but I'll hopefully we could have enough that both of you can answer this. Because, Dr. Nixon, you just said basically that you all have been hearing or been receiving promises year after year. So this is just a basic question, but I do have to ask, because this is not the only issue that's like this, I think, with regards to the duality of our conservatism versus our progressiveness or liberalism in the nation. Is it just that this topic is something that politicians and the wider public don't want to talk about? They just don't want to have the conversations, out of sight, out of mind, nothing to do with me?
Hello.
Oh, yeah. I think my concern isn't about the conversations that we're having that the public is having, or at least the thoughts. I mean, those are very important aspects of things, and that informs the way that legislation is shaped. But my main thing is just that as a society, we have people. There are people, and everyone, just by virtue of being a human being, is entitled to human rights. And so that is unequivocal. That's universal. That's not an argument to be made. Human rights are human rights, and everybody has human rights. And so there is the responsibility that the government has as the primary overarching kind of institution that guides the country in this way. The government has a responsibility to ensure that everyone enjoys and it respects, protects, and fulfills the human rights of everyone. And that's what needs to be happening. That's what we need to see. That's what we need to pay attention to, and that's what we continue to advocate for. That is the government protecting and ensuring that the human rights of LGBTQI plus people in Trinidad and Tobago and everyone in general continues to be respected, protected, and fulfilled.
Exactly. And that is our, that's what our work is. And I want to invite all of the listeners and viewers today to please check out our work on KaisoTT.org if you want to know more about what we do at Wholeness and Justice. Our report that we've launched for Ida Hobbit, recognizing the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia, which is a very important, significant day. We launch our report every year to let people know about the work we've done in our Wholeness and Justice team. And over the last year, you can find it on KaisoTT.org and follow us at KaisoTT, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And you can find the report and, review it, and also contact us for more information. Because as Kellogg is saying, we do this engagement with the public, but we also send our information and reports to the government. So we are advocating both, through the government and wanting them to listen and be advised by us in a significant way. But we're also engaging the public because we recognize that there's ways that we can advocate for changing laws, but we also are working around social and cultural norms, which I think you're also asking us about, right? It's a two-prong, it's a multidimensional approach to advocacy and human rights. And we continue to ask the questions and engage media and engage the public. But at the same time, I do think that it's important for us to recognize that just because we are considered a minority community does not mean that we have to, quote unquote, get that everybody has to agree. Governments are supposed to protect the rights of those most marginalized. If we waited for dominant groups, if we waited for, if we wait for dominant groups who are in power to protect the rights of those who don't have power or who are marginalized, we would not be where we are today, right? We have to fight. You have to fight for justice. You have to fight for freedom and demand rights. And that's what we see any marginalized group who's done that. And we continue to fight those battles, especially in this post-colonial state that we're in, where colonial structures still impact us every day. Systems of classism and racism and white supremacy are everywhere, and they impact then how we think about gender and sexuality. So I want to say that, I think this idea that we have to reach some kind of consensus or agreement on human rights, if we waited for that, we would still be dealing with colonial rule, right? So we have to also say that it's okay for a minority group to advocate, and that governments and systems and structures should be created and sustained to promote and protect the rights of all.
Well, I will just end with saying my concern is that, unfortunately, governments tend to follow the popular consensus. So that's the catch, right? How many governments are going to have the courage to maybe say, well, no, perhaps you need to look at it this way, or perhaps we need to consider this direction. Because at the end of the day, folks, if it could happen to any of us, no matter how much of a minority it is, then to some extent, it's only a matter of time before it very well could happen to all of us. So I will leave that there. I want to thank you again. Dr. Angelique Nixon, Mr. Kellogg, sir, I will spare you my poor attempts at linguistics. From CAISO, thank you for fighting for just one could argue. We have many of our marginal communities, but important nevertheless. All right, folks, we have to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue with the conversations here on Talking Point. This is WSN, your content capital. We'll be right back.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered,
the conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN Content Capital.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN Content Capital.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital.
This May, the spectacular event you've been waiting for is coming. May 27th, celebrate amazing North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Festival grounds, Blashy shares. Born here, played here. Tickets available at Crosby's, Extra Foods Endeavour, Shogunas Main Road, Sangre Grande, Arima, Grand Bazaar, Mart's Liquor Mart, Diego Martin, Kenny's Sports Outlets, Athletes by the Park, and WESN.
Well, folks, welcome back to Talking Point. Unfortunately, Senator Lachmidial could not join me today, so we were able to contact Keaton. He turned around his car and came straight back here just to join me for the end of Talking Point. Keaton, how are you going?
See, I'm your savior. Hello, Sean.
Stop listening to Big. So you pointed out something to me, and it didn't really register. Somehow I totally missed this last night. But Tutor has now accepted 4% wage increase, and it seems as though the government's position with regards to the labor negotiations is working out. I think you said something to that effect.
Yes, because Tutor is not the only union to accept the 4% offer. The Defence Force, the Fire Association, Prisons Officers Association has also accepted the 4% increase from the CPO's office. And I suggested it last year. I said that if you think the government was not negotiating well, this is the situation that has been going on since last year. I said they've put an offer on the table. It was now up to Tutor to respond, and I kept saying this is not how unions should be responding. Protest actions is not how you're going to respond to debate. Calling for a day of rest and reflection is not how you're going to respond to any sort of negotiation. And therefore, they had to probably come stronger. Now, whether or not you wanted to believe that the government was going to actually move from their position of 4% was an entirely different story. But I believe that the government's position, their stance, that was their final offer. And I think the unions have left it long enough where they've realized, listen, a 4% increase is better than a 0% increase, or a 1%, or a 2%, or a 3%. But beyond that, they've also gotten further allowances. They've actually gotten travel allowances, adjustments to traveling allowances, which will obviously mean an increase. It's not going to be a decrease.
Right.
The cost of living allowance, which is cooler, a grant of a one-time lump sum payment of $4,000 to members of the teaching service retired compulsory, voluntarily, and with permission on the grounds of ill health for the period of October 1st to September 30th, 2016. There's also been an increase in the phone allowances for principals, vice principals, senior teachers, as well as senior special education teachers. So, you know, generally, they have more negotiations to come up to, including with school-based assessment, Caribbean vocational qualifications. But given that this is the fourth union to actually accept the 4% offer, one could argue, listen, the government just remaining right there, remaining resilient after all the protests and after all the action of a day of rest and reflection is worked.
Listen, I get it. People might not like the government. We question their decisions on the show on multiple situations. But at the end of the day, there's two things that stand out. One, for better or worse, they held firm with Petrotrin. So that precedent is set. It's like, look, when we say we have a bottom line, we literally have no further that we could go. We've done it before, we could do it again. And other unions before Twitter has accepted the 4%. That's also setting a precedent. The other thing is look at the budget supplementation and what it's for. It's mostly for I'm not too sure if we got a full breakdown, but it's mostly to pay off bills and to pay off VAT refunds. That's outstanding.
It's for recurrent expenditure,
right?
yeah.
These are outstanding debts that the government owed money to people for. So we're not even talking about, oh, we have a supplementation for last year's stuff. You know, I believe the minister did mention 7 years of bills is what they're looking at. So if they're now looking in 2023 to supplement the budget to try to pay off some of these things, where would there be extra money for wage increases?
I would actually prefer, if I got a greater breakdown from the Minister of Finance, I would prefer to have an understanding. He said there's 7 years worth of debt. I'd like to know what is the value of that debt.
Yes.
What I would also like to know is the value of the loans that Tran-Tobago has taken within the last 7 years. I'd also like to know what is the value, that's the value in terms of received. What is the value of the outstanding sums of money that we have to pay towards these loans, as well as debt separator loans, as in other words, costs from the government in terms of expenditure that's overrun. And I'd like a breakdown, obviously, of the total overall. I want a figure, of the debt that Tran-Tobago is in.
That figure, the debts that he's talking about, the amount of money owed to contractors and suppliers and people who are owing who are owed their VAT refunds, I think that's key, because the hope is that the supplementation might be able to pay it all off. But if it's 7 years, the reality is it might not be. It might just be a fraction.
Remember, VAT returns at this point is going to be paid back if you're $250,000 over in terms of VAT repayments.
Well, yes.
It's going to be paid through bonds,
yeah.
right? And they're saying that when those bonds mature, the amount of money that you're actually going to be given back is more than what you actually owed. That's how a bond generally works, right? But, is the business community, I haven't heard too much in terms of whether or not they're accepting of it. I know one businessman who happens to also be an opposition senator is completely against it. I mean, he's a member of the opposition, bear that in mind. But is he speaking from the aspect of a businessman or the opposition?
There's supposed to be a facility, because I believe the minister alluded that the last time they did this, a facility was made so that you could sell the bond at a financial institution to get cash now. So the idea is, for all intents and purposes, the government, we don't have the liquidity to do this, so we will basically use the bank's liquidity. It's all, of course, dependent on if the banks are willing to buy it, which generally speaking, government bonds are safe, banks are willing to buy it. But back to the fact that, yes, it would be nice to know what the details are, because then we would know how much progress we're making. It's like my complaint this morning with the first topic on the Daily Review. Yes, we have nominal GDP, debt to GDP ratio, it's improving. But part of that is because of inflation. So the economy is not necessarily getting better. So yes, you're saying that you're paying off outstanding debts, but to what extent is the situation getting better?
Which is why it is always argued, it is always preferred that the Minister of Finance gives context and he's not nitpicky. Now, according to Karen Yosishar and other economists, the role of the Minister of Finance is also to inspire confidence. In that regard, Colin Imbert has done a decent job. I'll say why. Is there ever a time where he stood up and been negative? He has not really been negative. He's always stood up and he's always looked at things with optimism. To the extent that one might not even argue it's optimism, it's a campaign more than anything else. But beyond that, if you add context to these things, if you break down and if you analyze it, you realize, hold up, there is some truth to what is being said.
Yes.
But that is not the entire extent of the issue or the matter.
Folks, we have to break for news, but I'll say this, I can't disagree with what Keith just said. There's some positivity with what the minister is doing, maybe. But we have to break for news on your own WSN. When we return, we'll open up the phone lines. Want to hear from you, the viewer. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. CXC launches investigation into leaked paper. NPTA says parents and students frustrated with exam uncertainty. Regionally, Guyana Fuel Company fined for importing and selling fuel without license. And internationally, Italy flood death toll rises. Now for the details. The Caribbean Examinations Council, CXC, yesterday said that it is aware of the concerns that the Caribbean Secondary Education Certificate, CSEC, Math Paper 2, which was written yesterday, was leaked. This matter is of great concern to the organization, and they have commenced their investigations and will make a definitive statement once the investigation is complete. In the meantime, candidates can rest assured that this matter is being treated with the highest urgency, CXC said in a release. NPTA President Kevin David says it is important that CXC communicate and be transparent with the parents and students affected by the reported leak of the maths paper. He made several suggestions that could alleviate a reoccurrence of this incident.
These sort of issues affect us in the long run. Secondly, I would also recommend that they reassess and review the security measures in place to help mitigate future breaches. This, I believe, is independent for each island and just should be done by all. Thirdly, reassess the examination grading process. I mean, that could be some argument that could be put forward there, but I believe reassessing the examination grading process to account for the breaches or the potential impact of those breaches that occurred on Wednesday.
Meanwhile, he also provided an update on the progress of security at the Belmont School.
From information reaching my desk is that work will start our permanent structure will start in the July-August vacation itself. So that in itself, remedial work is being actually planned for the July-August vacations.
In regional news now, Guyana Fuel Company, SBF International Incorporated, was last week fined $300,000 by the court for its wholesale selling of petroleum and petroleum products without having the requisite licenses back in 2020, and it has until June 30th to pay or have one of its directors imprisoned for 3 months. The Guyana Energy Agency, in a press release, stated that on May 11, 2023, Magistrate Rondell Weaver found SBF International Incorporated guilty of the offense of conducting the business of a wholesaler of petroleum and petroleum products without authority to do so under a wholesale and importing wholesale license contrary to Regulation 41C, Petroleum and Petroleum Products Regulations 2014. In international news now, 9 people died and thousands were evacuated from their homes as torrential rain battered Italy's northern Emilia-Romagna region, triggering floods and landslides, officials said on Wednesday. Civil Protection Minister said some areas had received half their average annual rainfall in just 36 hours, causing rivers to burst their banks, sending water cascading through towns and submerging thousands of acres of farmland. Well, that was your news to the hour on WESN. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for watching.
North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Safe and sound, that's how we'll get you to the biggest North Coast Jazz ever. No hassle and no worries. Park your ride at the Queen's Park Savannah, hop on board a safe and secure shuttle with your $100 return fee, and that's it. Service begins at 10 a.m. through 1 p.m. and returns from festival grounds from 7 p.m. Park and ride, a $100 return fee, first come, first go shuttle service service to festival grounds Blashy shares. No hassle and no worries. North Coast Jazz, May 27th. Born here. Played here. Tickets available at Crosby's, Extra Foods Endeavour, Shogunas Main Road, Sangre Grande, Arima, Grand Bazaar, Mart's Liquor Mart, Diego Martin, Kenny's Sports Outlets, Athletes by the Park, and WESN.
Welcome back to Talking.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's just go straight into the question of the day.
All right, so the question Sean and I are asking you this morning with our one phone line that is working. Thank you, TSTT. Do you think the Commissioner of Police needs to re-examine her crime plan, or does it need more time? In other words, whether or not it is effective over a time period, or whether or not it just needs to be re-examined as a whole. Question we're asking, do you think the Commissioner of Police needs to re-examine her crime plan, or does it need more time? Well, that's a question Sean and I ask you. You can join the conversation this morning, 623-9376. Yes, our one phone line is working, so you can call.
I was anticipating the second number as well.
Just so you know, please, if you're calling in, just be, kind, respectful, and brief with your responses, because we like to give everybody an opportunity to share their thoughts and opinions with us. But the phone lines are now open, ladies and gentlemen. Do you think the Commissioner of Police needs to re-examine her crime plan, or does it need more time?
Of course, I had a conversation with Kaiso. I think it's a conversation that they didn't necessarily want to say it outright, but I think it's a conversation that we shy away from. And for the most part, it should not be a difficult conversation to have, because, as was pointed out by one of our guys behind the scenes, we've come a long way in TNT. We've come a long way. It's not that hard to just take the last few steps.
We've come a long way, for the good or for the bad?
I have seen other countries for the bad, but I don't think, with regards to these sort of issues, we've gone that far. I don't think so.
I'm not speaking necessarily or specifically to these issues. I'm talking about generally how society has evolved.
Okay, well,
which is a conversation we can have in a moment or two. But let's take this call from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I would, as respect to your question, I would give it a little more time. I think she allowed herself to be boxed in when she was asked to put a time on it when the Joint Select Committee. That was based on her inexperience in that kind of forum. But I will give it more time, because I am seeing some more action, so I would give it more time.
Okay, good, thank you.
As respect to that issue with the CXC leakage or leak of the math paper.
Yes.
It is so ridiculous. We have been having these leaks over and over and over again.
Every year.
And that, in addition to the business of lessons, needs to be our focus. We need to zero in on that and do some cross-examination.
Yes.
The last point, Sean, good interview this morning with the Kaiso. However, what my issue is this with Kaiso, they're looking for special attention. They need to understand there's a society that they live in Trinidad and Tobago that is steeped in religious and religious traditions, right? Now, you have, while those religions are tolerant, there's a conundrum within those same religions where they have an issue with sexual orientation. Now, that being said, if you look at how, when we do legislation, the government does legislation to protect the vulnerable in society, which is you look at the people that are in poverty, you look at people with disabilities, you look at people with mental illness and that type of thing. They do not fall into any of those categories. And they need to understand that. Because for the most part, we have no problem with them, you know. However, when it comes to gender, that is where the issue is. They have to understand that in the eyes of most of the community, gender is a fact. Either male or you're female.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start to get into the letters, okay, you have the L, G, B. When you start to get into the T and the Q and all those things, that is where the society is having an issue. And society is not being tolerant with respect to that. And they have to understand, for the most part, they are ordinary citizens like everybody else, and they do not come in for special attention.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you, caller. The one thing I will say, I think some of what you're concerned about, we see in other nations, like in America. I don't think it's here yet. Now, maybe it will be here. And maybe it's coming here or it's already arrived here. But for the most part, and some of those things I don't agree with either. But I don't think that's what Kaiso is speaking about today. Generally speaking, at least the part where they said, look, basic. Because if they're being discriminated against in basic ways, they should have basic protections. Because even the disabled, there was Dr. Oh gosh, I'm gonna mess up her name. Dr. Paré, she brought up the fact that the Equal Opportunities Commission is not doing enough for disabled people.
No, I think that it's a good point that you've made there, that there should be basic protection.
Yes.
And the Equal Opportunities Commission is before a Joint Select Committee. But the issue is, and this is where I kind of understand where the caller from San Fernando is that whilst we will not argue against basic protection, it seems as though they go so far that they give, I suppose, this...
the extra.
Yeah, you kind of get this notion that it is a lot, it is far-reaching, it is conforming.
So the question is, based on what they said in the interview, they're not receiving basic protections and they're not asking for extra. In fact, she literally said that that's what some people think that they're asking for.
Let's continue.
So I'll agree with that though, right?
Let's continue. Let's take this call from Claxton Bay first. Good morning, caller.
Morning to you two young guys there.
Good morning.
Does the commissioner have any crime plan?
She does have a 10-point crime plan.
She's saying the police not able. So that comes like she has no crime plan. But the Security Council. I know the Prime Minister is the head of Security Council, right?
Yes.
But who make up the bodies? Who make up the bodies to me?
All right, so the National Security Council, thank you very much, caller. That's a very good question. The National Security Council is made up of all protective services as part of the national security arm, whether it be the Defense Force, whether it be the Coast Guard. I think even the prisons are involved in it, the Trans-Tobago Police Service. And then you have members of the cabinet as well, such as the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, the Minister of National Security. I think even Stuart Young sits on that particular panel. At times, a Minister of Public Utilities, because let's be honest with you, if electricity goes out, that's a national security issue as well. The Prime Minister is the head of the National Security Council, so you've got all these advisors as part of the council. It's a very good question, actually, and that's all part of it. But before we go to this call, LGBTQ, it's not just LGBTQ anymore. Apparently, it's now LGBTQQIP2SAA.
So now we're okay.
That's just education.
Now we're
information.
verging into territory where I think it's more debatable, but I don't want to get into that because again, our quick take is going to be taken out of context. We have a caller.
If we go too much into this morning, we take away from the interview, and let's not do that. So let's take this caller from Marima. Good morning, caller.
Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning.
I want to throw a spanner in the mix here.
Mm-hmm.
I have in front of me from Twitter, and what the advisory states is that the special tribunal by law ruled for 10 years. So it's a 5-year period instead of 4. So if they had to rule on the last 2 bargaining periods, it would have been for a 10-year period, so therefore it would have cut into this one. Now for me, I call that a cowboy trial. Because the Minister of Finance knew this, so he specifically sent it there. That decision on one hand is final and binding. It had no appeal again. So whatever they decided, they had to go with. So any prison officers say they were forced, I now understand what they mean. Now, secondly, this is for short. If your nominal GDP increase, right?
Yeah.
And you're telling me that oil production is down and gas production is down, and that is our main export driver, one of our main export drivers, that is telling me that you're getting a higher price for these items on the outside. So it's not necessarily that the economy is doing better. It's just that we're getting better prices for our products. All right? So when we look at real GDP now, that is where we're going to really see the crux of the matter. And as I keep telling you, even though Trinidad and Tobago has a high standard of living, the quality of life that Trinidadians enjoy is very, very low. You ask anybody, the state of the roads, the drains when rain fall. Imagine people in Superior cannot get the cesspits clean because the regional corporation down there crying. And in the mid-budget review, mid-year review, 100 million was allocated only to local government. That can't be right. That's not good governance, that's madness.
And every single cent will be used. Have a good day. Every single cent will be used between now and then. Because local government elections, it's already started, by the way.
Wait, well, hold on. Part of that, there was also 100 million. I don't know if we're confusing it. There was basically like a shift in with some money, and I can't remember if it was from Works and Transport to local government, but I believe it was from local government to Works and Transport, because they essentially moved some of the responsibilities, I believe, and put it on the Works and Transport, so they put the money under Works and Transport.
I'm looking forward to my road being paved, because already I think one thing is happening. There's a gym on Pasture Road, of which I've used, and Pasture Road has been in a mess for the last few years.
Now, to be fair...
Hold on. And I said it, I think I said about 2 months ago, I said, listen, local government elections are coming up. Watch and see how Pasture Road is going to be paved. So said, so done. They paved one half last night. They're going to pave the other half tonight. But for those who are watching and do not understand what nominal GDP is versus real GDP accounts for the value of the dollar adjusted without inflation. Nominal GDP is with inflation, which is precisely the point my co-host was making. When you speak about nominal GDP and saying that how it's up and debt to GDP ratio, well, that is, it's going smooth, right? It's going smooth. Then again, context, add context.
The irony is the way how he said it almost made it seem as though I am somebody who has no idea what I'm saying. I was just told something, and to my basic understanding, this sounds good, so I'm going to say it. Because he said, well, nominal GDP, that's what we calculate debt to GDP for. It's like, that does not mean, just because nominal GDP is what we use for debt to GDP ratio, that doesn't mean that the issues with not accounting for inflation at a time where we had high inflation, right?
Sorry. Speaking about issues, pause on that for a moment. Excuse me, my director just said something in my ear. What was that?
Well, I mean, that's not a government problem, so, but yeah.
It may not be a government problem, but Disney...
Actually, oh gosh.
A caller just called in and asked us to highlight this point. Apparently, since yesterday, Flow has no internet in Princestown. I don't know. I guess TSTT and Flow are now competing. That's what they say, and they're on the markets to compete with each other.
At the end of the day, you know, they pull from the same pool of candidates, of technicians, of executives when you get down to it. I'm trying to find it sometime this week. I don't know if it was last night or earlier, where somebody basically said the future of, I think it was the Bmobile, it could be the Bmobile CEO.
Yes, the CEO of Bmobile.
The future of the country is technology. And I'm just like, yes, but our implementation of said technology it's not smooth.
Implementation. TSTT is using dial-up and calling it wireless. And that is what we're suffering with here at WSN. At least here, I'm pretty sure everywhere else. TSTT is making an absolute mess. Please say, God, please help us out. If you're watching Talking Point this morning, what's going on? Caller, do we have a caller on the line? I think we had a caller on the line with us. All right, okay. I guess TSTT messed that one up too.
So San Fernando, I don't disagree with your concerns. I just think that right now, based on what was said, we don't have basic protections. Now, once we have them for LGBTQ, then we could debate on what comes next. Because I agree with you, in other jurisdictions, I do think these issues are taken too far. And in some cases, ludicrously so, to the point where you can't believe some of the extremes. But I don't think we've reached that way. I think we're still within the realm of sanity right now in TNT. And the Equal Opportunity Commission has a lot of gaps. Just disabled people alone are not fully protected. So that's to tell you. Part of it too is our laws can't keep up with all of these changes to society in general.
Is it that the debate surrounds acceptance or the debate surrounds respect? Because there will be those who will respect your position and the way you want to live your life. They may not necessarily accept it, but they respect it. There may be those who accept and respect. So what is the argument about really?
They actually, Kellogg and Dr. Nixon, did not necessarily want to talk about how society, right, what they were talking about, okay, basic protections. So it's not about accepting, I think, at the end of the day. The law cannot force a population to accept a subculture or a minority that it, for whatever reason, does not want to accept, right? Not saying that the majority doesn't want to accept, but just in basic terms. The law can't do that. You can't legislate someone's emotions or preferences. But what you can do is you can legislate basic rights. Basic rights to say, well, look, does this have anything to do with this government service that I'm trying to access? If it does, fine. If it doesn't, why is it being brought up? Why are you mentioning it for? I mean, even with regards to how we treat with male victims of domestic violence or single fathers who are being taken advantage of, you know, society does not necessarily show respect, acceptance or respect for that, but they should at least respect it if they don't want to accept it.
I think society has a greater view of sympathy for single mothers rather than single fathers.
Yes.
Let me just remind you of our questions before we take this call. Do you think the Commissioner of Police, it's funny the conversation that we're having during this segment, but actually the question stems from one of the topics earlier. Do you think the Commissioner of Police needs to re-examine her crime plan, or does it need more time? Good morning, caller from Chagonas.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for taking my call. I wanted to make relative to something which might be related to the issue of local government reform, and that is that I think somebody made a statement that when the reforms take place, that the local authorities would get funding, then would go to them to look after their own boroughs and whatever, the various areas for which they're responsible. But I want to ask a question which has been bothering me. We have in Trinidad an environmental levy paid into by all businesses and individuals. I just Googled it.
Mm-hmm.
From my understanding, millions, if not billions of dollars have been paid into that environmental levy. And if it is to be used for what we thought originally, for environmental purposes, what has happened to those funds? Where's the accountability? I'm talking about, for instance, I live in an area, a built-up area, piles of garbage. It's not just about garbage, it's about environmental issues. And I think if we are looking at resourcing these bodies, the local government authorities, to do what they have to do, the business people need to be asking a question, what are you doing with my levy? Why can't those funds also come, or some portions come into the coffers, so we can take care of environmental issues? So it's not just crime and the usual things we talk about. It's keeping our environment clean. Why should a built-up place have a pile of garbage here and a pile of garbage there? In addition to, of course, the sensitization of the public about garbage disposal, waste disposal, and so on and so forth. So that's a question. And I haven't heard any businessman or any group of business people, chambers, or anybody ask the question, what is happening to environmental levy? How is it being spent? Who is getting? And you might guess I'm prompted by the fact that I know of one particular group calling themselves an NGO, which is able to access millions of dollars to do projects. But then what are these projects? Where are they going? How are the money being spent? And I think the issue of accountability is critical, and that some of these business community, especially who are paying into this levy, and I think individuals as well, find out what's going on and make some demands as to we need to know how our money is being spent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I have to say. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Cole. That's a very good point, but the response that you're going to get is simple. We're using it to do a drainage study, clean drains, ensure that that's the response you're going to get. But it's a very good point that you've raised. I just need to pause from this right now because we have some breaking news coming in just about 45 minutes ago. We were informed of this. The people of Trans-Tobago have the right to vote. Where is that coming from? The Privy Council Law Lords delivered a judgment against the government's decision to postpone the local government elections and extend the life of councils for 1 year. Former Attorney General Anand Ramlogan secured victory at the Privy Council after being defeated in the Trans-Tobago's High Court and Courts of Appeal after he challenged, on behalf of his client Ravi Balgobin Miraj, the extension of local government officials' tenure from December 2nd, 2022 for 1 year following the proclamations of sections of the Miscellaneous Provisions Local Government Reform Act of 2022. The judgment was delivered on Thursday at 8:30 this morning. That was just about an hour ago. President of the Supreme Court, Lord Robert John Reed, and Deputy President Patrick Stewart Hodge adjudicated the case. In its judgment, it emphasized the importance of a citizen's right to vote. Just reading for you as it comes in, the Lords have noted the case of municipal corporations. The popular vote is direct for the councillors and indirect by means of party list for aldermen. So therefore, at this point in time, the government has lost its argument. Anand Ramlogan has won the appeal.
The crux of the argument is in the judgment, the majority judgment. If Parliament had intended to give the government such power, that is to say, to delay the election, it is reasonable to expect that it would have done so expressly. And I think it's because when the act was passed, the two majority, because it was three, right, justices in this case, what they're saying is, when it was passed in 2019, it should have more or less been spelled out. This is what it means. This is how we're going to do it. And the fact that it was somewhat taken by surprise by the electorate, well, I believe, is more or less basically what they took issue with.
Unfortunately, not very good news for Faris Arawi. Again, the Lords took issue with the Parliament conferring itself the power to decide the life of local government councils. The council said it was unable to agree with TNT's Court of Appeal that the amendments to sections 11 and 12 of the Miscellaneous Act, increasing terms of office from 3 to 4 years, applied to the incumbent councillors and aldermen. They noted that councillors and aldermen elected in December 2019 were due to lose office in December 2022, and further local elections were due to be held March 2023. The judgment stated that on November 7, 2022, a proclamation was issued bringing a small number of provisions of 2022 Act into force.
I mean, we more or less said that initially, but we conceded to the fact that, look, the law says it, the law says it. But this is a case, folks, where now we're seeing judiciary case law more or less, clarifying a situation and setting and, cementing what the law is going to be. In its finality, this is Privy Council. There's nowhere else to go after this.
So this is breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. You can look for updates throughout the day here on WESN and tomorrow's discussion. But as we leave you, the government has lost at the Privy Council with respect to its decision to postpone the local government elections and extend the life of councils for 1 year. Therefore, it begs to argue, what is the next step? Are we going to wait for local governments in December, or is it due to take place in a month's time? Because I think it's 90 days or something like that. But which is soon. No,
that's 3 months.
No, we need to wait to hear more on the judgments and what is the step for the decision right now in terms of local government elections. But that's where we'll have to conclude. Unfortunately, we're out of time. So, Michael Small.
Good you turned around the car just for this?
It would seem so. So it seems as though tomorrow morning we already have a packed program.
Oh boy.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Sean Michael Small. I'm Keaton Shaw. This has been Talking Points on WESN Content Capital. Today is a good day to have a good day. Make it a great one, and we'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN. North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Safe and sound, that's how we'll get you to the biggest North Coast Jazz ever. No hassle and no worries. Park your ride at the Queen's Park Savannah. Hop on board a safe and secure shuttle with your $100 return fee, and that's it. Service begins at 10 a.m. through 1 p.m. and returns from festival grounds from 7 p.m. Park and ride, a $100 return fee, first come, first go shuttle service to festival grounds, Blashy shares. No hassle and no worries. North Coast Jazz, May 27th. Born here, played here. Tickets available at Crosby's, Extra Foods Endeavour, Shogunas Main Road, Sangre Grande, Arima, Grand Bazaar, Mart's Liquor Mart, Diego Martin, Kenny's Sports Outlets, Athletes by the Park, and WESN.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit? Yes. What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive. It is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole. It's for all of us in public.
Large over proceedings too. But despite the G7 agenda, there is still disappointment in the region that Biden's visit was curtailed, particularly in Papua New Guinea. In response, the White House has vowed to hold a Pacific Island summit, the second of its type within 12 months, as Washington looks to stave off Chinese influence in the Indo-Pacific.
And in the United States, the Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, has signed bills banning children from undergoing transgender medical treatments or going to drag shows and restricting pronoun use in classrooms. Public bathrooms and changing rooms must also be separate based on biological sex under the legislation. DeSantis is expected to announce sometime soon that he is standing for the presidency in the 2024 elections. And with more on that story, this from Andrew Hillier.
Republican Governor Ron DeSantis puts the final stamp on a raft of measures targeting the transgender community. Amongst the provisions, legislation banning children from undergoing gender-affirming medical care.
You have a movement amongst, I would say, rogue elements of the medical establishment to do things that is basically the mutilation of minors. I mean, they're trying to do sex change operations on minors, giving them things like puberty blockers and doing things that are irreversible.
The move puts Florida in line with a dozen other U.S. states that have already enacted similar laws, but the measures don't stop there. One new law bans children from attending adult-themed drag shows. Another forbids children from asking students their preferred pronouns. And it'll also be a criminal offence for people to use bathrooms that don't align with their sex at birth.
A woman should not be in a locker room having to worry about someone from the opposite sex being in their locker room.
Republicans say the legislation protects children, but critics insist it discriminates against and demonizes the LGBTQ community. The move comes as DeSantis prepares to announce a bid for the White House. He's expected to officially launch his presidential campaign before the end of the month.
In the state of Montana in the United States, meanwhile, the governor there is set to become the first state to ban TikTok, the Chinese-owned media giant, from personal devices. Governor Greg Gianforte signed the ban into law on Wednesday. It's due to take effect on January the 1st. Well, the video sharing platform plans to appeal against the move. TikTok says it's a threat to freedom of expression. And TikTok has come under scrutiny from authorities around the world over concerns that data could be passed to the Chinese government. The law will make it illegal for app stores to offer TikTok, but will not ban people in Montana who already have TikTok from using it.
Is a national security threat. This app steals information and data from users, and its ability to share that data with the Chinese Communist Party is unacceptable and infringes on Montana's rights to privacy.
To Italy now, and authorities in the northeastern Italian town of Ravenna issued an immediate evacuation order today concerning 3 villages threatened by floods after heavy rains left 9 people dead across northeastern Italy. Buses were being sent to help residents leave the areas after the river Lamoni burst its banks. Rivers and streams have flooded areas across the southeast of the Emilia-Romagna region following downpours earlier this week. Well, I spoke a short time ago to our correspondent based in Rome, Seema Gupta, for more on this story.
The death toll has risen to 9, 27,000 people in that region without electricity. 37 towns flooded because of those overflowing rivers. Just 120 landslides registered, and they're expecting more as they don't expect the situation to die down anytime soon. Now, while the rains have subsided, the rivers and the waters continue to rise. And that's why you have towns like Lugo and Cervia in that area you mentioned essentially flooding overnight, and the call for further evacuations to continue. Now, a cabinet meeting has been scheduled for next Tuesday, and they're expected to declare a state of emergency that will free up funds that are necessary but will